That night, I saw them for the first time on a long stretch of road in America. A road that seemed to hold nothing memorable but cold wind and the rush of passing cars. Then, far off in the dim light, figures in brown robes appeared. They walked slowly, steadily, as if each step were placing something invisible on the ground, until you looked closely and realized what it was. They were laying down peace. People call it the walk for peace. All I know is that as the procession passed, the things I once thought were so certain, rushing, competing, always trying to prove I was right, suddenly felt smaller. And in the middle of them was a monk, calm in his posture, quiet in his presence, yet his eyes carried a kind of light that felt unusual. Not the shine of attention, but the steady glow of someone who has lived long enough through life's spinning cycles to know what is truly worth holding on to. They introduced him as Venerable Tu Yan. What I know about him, I keep within the boundaries of public information. He came to the United States in 1997, studied and earned a degree as an information technology engineer, then found the Buddha's teachings and asked his parents for permission to ordain. Public sources don't clearly share his childhood. I only know that he's Vietnamese. Yet strangely, when someone has reached the point of being able to walk thousands of miles in silence, you understand this much. Childhood may be part of the story, but the monastic life is what shapes the person. I imagine the day he stood before his parents to ask for that permission. Permission to leave a familiar way of living. Permission to let go of the plans people usually call stability, a career, a future, comfort. Permission to step into a different life. Not a life above anyone else, but a life that would be harder on the self. To ordain, for many, is a beautiful phrase, but for the one who lives it, it's a turning point, a hard stop. Because after the head is shaved and the robe is worn, the real questions begin knocking at the door. There's no longer busyness to hide behind, no longer noise to cover things up, no longer I have to do this and that to distract from the most important question of all. Where is my mind actually going? He took refuge under Venerable Bu Duk, connected with Huangdao Temple, Huangdao Vipassana Bhavana Center in Fort Worth, Texas. I once heard someone say, there are places that don't overwhelm you with architecture, yet the moment you step inside, your heart naturally softens. Maybe it's because life moves slower there. People aren't chasing what's new. They return again and again to the basics, keeping precepts, chanting, meditating, living with mindful dignity, until ordinary daily life itself becomes practice. If you've ever tried sitting still for 5 minutes without touching your phone, you'll understand that monastic life isn't some distant concept. It's difficult from the smallest thing, staying with the present moment. The monk begins with a foundation called the precepts. The precepts are ethical discipline, guarding body, speech, and mind so they don't run wild. People sometimes think precepts mean restrictions, but for a practitioner, they're like the railing on a bridge. You can still walk without a railing, but one slip and you fall. I often think of the precepts as relearning the art of not adding more suffering, not adding suffering to yourself, not adding suffering to others, speaking just enough, not feeding anger, not creating more harmful karma. A monk trains in deportment, standing, walking, sitting, lying down, all with mindfulness. It sounds simple, but it's a revolution, because most of us live by reflex. Someone disagrees and we react. Someone touches our pride and we react. Someone doesn't validate us and we react. In the rhythm of monastic life, those reflexes are brought into the light, and once they're seen clearly, they don't control us the way they used to. After the precepts comes concentration. Concentration isn't an empty mind, It's the ability not to be swept away so easily. In meditation, one returns to the breath. In-breath, knowing it's in. Out-breath, knowing it's out. And between those two movements, you begin to meet yourself, honestly. Some days the mind is calm. Some days it's like a marketplace. Some days you sit down and a storm of memories and worries comes roaring in. But the practitioner doesn't fight the storm. He learns to see it, name it, and return to the breath. From concentration, the path opens into wisdom. Wisdom not from hearing a lot, but from seeing clearly. And what people see most clearly sooner or later is a truth everyone knows, but few are willing to face. Impermanence. Everything comes and goes. Emotions come and go. Sadness comes and goes. Joy comes and goes. Success comes and goes. Failure comes and goes. When you truly see impermanence, you cling less. When you cling less, you suffer less. When you suffer less, you react less. And from there, compassion finally has a steady place to stand. According to public information, he received full ordination in 2010, an important milestone in becoming a bhikkhu. Some say ordination is like naming the road, but I think it's more like placing your whole life on the table and saying, from this day forward, I live by a vow. That vow is not only for yourself, but for your teachers, the Sangha, and everyone who will see the image of a monk and place their trust in it. Years later, public information shows that his practice didn't remain only in quiet places. In 2018, he founded the Huang-Tu Charity Association. I've always believed true practice naturally flows into action, because if meditation brings peace, that peace can't be kept in the heart like a private treasure. It has to become a way of living, yielding, lifting others up, sharing, standing with those who are vulnerable, doing something, even something small, to reduce suffering. But practice isn't only doing many good deeds. Practice is also going deeper. And public information mentions that he traveled to Myanmar to study and meditate, something that made me pause. Myanmar is known for traditions of vipassana, practiced with great discipline. There, students aren't pampered. Meditation isn't for comfort. Meditation is to look directly at the mind, to see craving, anger, delusion, to see the subtle ego, to see the attachments that have been clinging to body and mind for a very long time. I imagine his days in Myanmar. Early morning, the sky still dim, birdsong still low, and people are already seated. Sitting, then walking meditation. Walking, then sitting. Cycles repeating like that. Not to achieve a special state, but to discover something simple. The mind always wants to run away from the present. When you see that clearly, a kind of freedom begins. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is not being dragged around by what you can't control. Anger, fear, comparison, dissatisfaction. In that same stream, he's connected with the Dhammachataya project and a great vow to preserve the Dhamma, publicly announced around the full moon of the 4th lunar month in 2022, according to public sources. When I hear the words great vow, I feel a tremor, because a vow isn't a pretty sentence. A vow has weight. It pulls a person away from personal convenience towards something long-lasting for many others. Every project has technical details, of course, but at a deeper level, that vow asks a single question: what will I leave behind beyond my own existence? Also in 2022, public sources mention a 112-day walking pilgrimage in India and other parts of South Asia. Pilgrimage by foot is an ancient practice. When you walk, the body aches, and when the body aches, the mind reveals its true face. An untrained mind complains when tired, gets irritated in the heat, becomes short-tempered when hungry. But a monk walking pilgrimage enters a living classroom. Each pain becomes a teaching, each irritation a reminder. Endure, endure again, observe, breathe, step. And during that journey, he met the dog Aloka, a detail that later touched the hearts of many followers. I've always believed the most beautiful symbols aren't created by planning. They're born from natural compassion. A dog walking alongside a pilgrimage
becomes a sign that compassion doesn't choose its object. You don't care because someone deserves it, but because they're suffering. You don't care to be praised, but because the heart has been trained long enough that when it sees suffering, it wants to lift it. Then came 2025, and he began what many call unthinkable in modern America, the Walk for Peace. According to public information, the group set out on 10/26/2025 from Fort Worth, Texas, walking about 2,300 miles, 3,700 kilometers, towards Washington, D.C., with an expected finish around mid-February 2026. Some sources mention 2/13/2026. The purpose is clearly stated, to spread mindfulness, peace. I once asked someone who travels on journeys like this, when you walk like that, what do you think about all day? He smiled. They don't think that much. They know a lot. They know the wind is cold. They know the feet hurt. They know the mind wants to quit. They know irritation is rising. They know they are stepping. That's all. Yet that alone can change a person's life. Because in modern life, we lack that knowing. We live without knowing we're living. We eat without knowing we're eating. We speak without knowing we're speaking. We laugh without knowing we're laughing. And we grieve without knowing we're grieving. And without that knowing, we're controlled by habit, by reaction, by fear, by craving. But a true practitioner relearns the art of knowing. And when you know, you become free.
Their journey isn't a parade. They pass through small towns and long roads, places where people are waiting, and places where there's only wind and curious stares. Some come out of reverence, some out of curiosity, some because they're exhausted and need something to lean on. And there are moments that are purely human. A stranger offering a bottle of water, a family opening their door for rest, a child running out to ask, "Why do you keep walking?" And a gentle answer becoming a seed planted in a young heart. But then there came a day when the journey was no longer a simple, beautiful story. According to public sources, on 11/19/2025, the escort vehicle was struck while the group was walking near Dayton, Texas. Some monks were seriously injured and one lost a leg. The group's number decreased. When I read that, I felt cold all over, not from fear, but from understanding that there are losses even a monk must meet with blood and tears. And it's in moments like that, I think, that people truly understand what practice is. Practice isn't being gentle only when life is easy. Practice is when everything collapses and you still keep your direction. Practice doesn't erase pain. Practice teaches you how to stand with pain without creating more hatred, without turning an accident into a reason for bitterness, without turning loss into an excuse to abandon compassion. And the group kept walking, not because they weren't wounded, but because they had something deeper to lean on, a vow and the discipline of practice. If you think peace is a smooth, comfortable state, you'll misunderstand. In the eyes of a practitioner, peace can be the ability to continue in hardship without letting the heart be deformed. I remember that first image I saw on the road. They walked in silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because they were speaking in another language, through footsteps, through presence, through discipline, through an unhurried pace. There are words language can't reach, but a calm, steady walk can touch the deepest part of someone standing there, the part they've forgotten how to listen to. If you ask, so how does his practice show itself in this journey? I would tell it like this. His practice is in the great turning of his life, from someone living in the modern rhythm, arriving in the US in 1997, studying IT, to someone choosing the monastic path, finding the Buddha's teachings, asking his parents to permission to ordain. His practice is in the foundation, taking refuge in teachers, living the holy life, training in virtue, concentration, and wisdom. His practice is in the milestone of full ordination in 2010. His practice is in service, founding a charity association in 2018. His practice is in humility and depth, studying and meditating in Myanmar. His practice is in a long vow, Dhamma Satya, publicly announced in 2022. His practice is in pilgrimage on foot, 112 days in India, where he met Aloka. And his practice is clearest in the Walk for Peace, walking 2,300 miles, not to be called extraordinary,
but to remind people of something ordinary. Anyone can begin peace with a single breath. Because what moves people isn't the length of the journey, it's the depth of the message. In an age when everyone wants to talk, they chose to walk. In an age when everyone wants to win, they chose peace. In an age when everyone wants speed, they chose slowness. And that choice forces a quiet question inside the viewer. If they can live like that, what can I change in my own life? I think of the moment the group draws near Washington, D.C., the destination mentioned as mid-February 2026, with some sources stating 2/13/2026. But I believe the real destination isn't a final photo. The real destination is the silent changes the journey plants in the viewer's heart. Someone becomes less angry. Someone becomes less hopeless. Someone learns to breathe when anxious. Someone remembers they don't have to be hard all the time. Someone begins to live more kindly because compassion has, for a moment, walked through their life in the form of monks on the road. When I tell this story, I don't want you to remember too many dates, even though they form the spine of the narrative. I want you to remember one image, a single step placed down, unhurried, unshowy. And if you listen closely enough, inside that step is a small, honest message. Don't wait for life to calm down before you practice. Don't wait for the storm to pass before you breathe. Peace isn't something the sky hands you. Peace is something you train. And sometimes, starting with the simplest thing, knowing you are breathing, is enough to change the direction of your whole life. That's what I learned the night I saw them pass by.